Once again.
John Carter and the Carolina Camera, just back from Greenville, South Carolina, with more on Joe Jackson.
Oh, yeah. Now, if you don't recognize the name, that's okay, because you probably know him better by one of the most famous nicknames in baseball history, Shoeless Joe Jackson. And last week, a photo he purportedly signed was auctioned off for a record $1.4 million. He stands there at the ready in front of Fluor Field, the home of Greenville's minor league baseball team. One of the many tributes in Greenville to Shoeless Joe Jackson.
He was one of the best ball players who's ever lived. Born in Pickens County in 1887, moved to Greenville very early on in his life, lived the first 20 or so years of his life in Greenville, and then went to the major leagues. Had one of the best careers in baseball history. He's got the 4th highest batting average in the history of the sport. And unfortunately, his career was cut short after the 1919 Black Sox scandal, but most people believe that he's one of the best hitters who's ever lived. You know, Babe Ruth said it, Ty Cobb said it. Anybody who is anybody thought that Joe Jackson was the best hitter who ever lived.
So just how did Joe Jackson get the nickname Shoeless Joe? Well, he got the name before he went to the major leagues. Legend has it he was playing ball for one of the mill teams here in the area, and he just bought a brand new pair of spikes. But the spikes were too tight and they were causing blisters on his feet. So he took the spikes off and started playing ball in just his stocking feet. That's when a fan of the opposing team yelled out, "You shoeless son of a gun!" Well, the name stuck, and to this day, Shoeless Joe Jackson is one of the most recognized names in baseball history. And then there was the 1919 Black Sox scandal. Playing then for the Chicago White Sox, Jackson and 7 other teammates were implicated in a conspiracy to lose the series. Even though he was acquitted, he was banned from baseball for life. Jackson returned to Greenville. He opened a liquor store. Today it's a clothing store, but there is a plaque that commemorates the building's history. And here's the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum, housed in the final home where Jackson lived, which was moved here from its original location. Dan Wallach is the museum's executive director.
He was a very valued and beloved member of the community. On Saturday mornings, his wife Katie would actually open the liquor store, and Joe would be down at the local ball fields teaching kids how to play ball. So, you know, when little kids would come to the liquor store, they were too young to be let inside, but Joe would pull a chair out from behind the counter and go sit outside and talk baseball with them all day. And like, that's who he was as a person. And you know, there are countless stories of neighbors and community members who we've spoken to in the past few years who have said, you know, they remember coming to the liquor store, coming to the house, and just talking with this nice man who, you know, turned out to be one of the best players who's ever played baseball.
Yeah, you need to look at his record because it's absolutely phenomenal. Now, Shoeless Joe Jackson died in 1951. He was only 64 years old. But I want to get back to that photo that just sold for $1.47 million. We had this all over the news last week. Part of the reason it was so valuable is that Joe Jackson was illiterate and really couldn't write. So there are just very few instances where you can actually find his true signature. In fact, his wife Katie often signed for him. But now there are questions being raised about that signature on that photo. And we're going to take up that issue in our next Carolina Camera installment, because there are some very prominent Joe Jackson people who are saying, that's not his signature.
Oh, no.
And we're going to show you what his real signature looked like versus what the one on that photograph looks like. And we're going to talk to some other folks about, is it real or is it not?
I honestly think, John Carter, when you do that part of the story, that is going to make national news. I predict it right here because of what you've told me about
We'll
that
see,
story.
because
Wow.
I mean, the fact that that was the highest money ever paid for an autographed photograph, not a card itself. It's because it's a photograph purportedly signed by Joe Jackson. But yeah, it was the highest ever paid. So I think there's going to be a little more scrutiny to this.
Yeah. I love that story too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
White Sox, Carolinas.
He truly was loved in that community. There's so many tributes around Greenville to him. He was well loved, very well loved.
Before you leave,